Hi, I'm Greg Uland with Reynolds, and this is Connected at NADA in New Orleans. I'm really excited about this conversation. I get to sit down with Stephen Brown, who's the CTO at STELLA Automotive AI. Stephen, thanks so much for joining me.
Honored to be here, Greg.
So you have quite a background. You've done a lot of things in a lot of different disciplines. I'm hoping maybe we could start with just a little bit about you, a little bit about your background, and how you got to where you are with STELLA as the CTO.
Oh, that's a great question, Greg. So I'm Stephen Brown. I've been an engineer pretty much my entire life. Started coding when I was 6. My dad was
Really?
in tech. Yeah, really.
Okay.
And so I've been hands-on with computers. One thing you control in your life is the computer. So I've seen this evolution since the early 90s and been involved in it very early on. Academically, I went to UCLA. I studied embedded systems engineering, did undergrad computer science engineering, did a graduate degree in embedded systems, studied network processors and multimedia processors, all pretty complicated stuff.
Yeah.
Figured out pretty early on I wasn't smart enough to do it on my own, and felt the love of building teams and love building products and just really care about making things that work for real people.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, can you share a little bit? I think everybody knows what STELLA does, for the most part in our space. But maybe could you give a little bit of the origin story of STELLA and kind of the path to get to where we are today?
Absolutely. It's kind of interesting. I'm actually the first team member, the first employee of the founding company.
Okay.
So I've been here since day one. It was founded on a patent that me and my partner at the time, business partner, had written in conversational AI, and kind of a vision. This is kind of when Siri was just coming out. We had already filed this patent on an in-ear assistant that would kind of listen to what was going on contextually and help you. We ended up not building it, but the founding of the company was around this idea that the best way to interact with computers was through voice.
Sure.
Because no matter how complicated or how smart you are in a business environment, ultimately someone's going to ask you to do something through words.
Yeah.
So we're right here at the end of an 8-year journey from that point.
Okay.
And we've, it took us time to find the right product market fit. We spent quite a lot of time in the heavy equipment vertical, which has complicated problems and has fundamental language issues. Caterpillar was a big one of our customers, and they still are today for our founding company. And they actually have what they call Cat English.
Okay.
So they have terminology that is specific to cat, and it's complicated and documented and actually studied as its own subset of English, which is pretty incredible.
Okay. So how so? And I guess connect the dots for me a little bit, right? So the underlying technology, I assume, is very similar.
Mm-hmm.
But when I think of STELLA AI, I think of somebody calling into the dealership and scheduling a service appointment.
Right.
So connect the dots for me between that and Caterpillar.
No problem. That's actually the simpler use case.
Okay.
The scheduling is the simpler use case. John Deere and Caterpillar, they had fundamental language issues. So if we take a little bit of a sidebar here to talk about Caterpillar, they are very similar to the automotive OEMs in that they rely on their relationships with their franchised resellers.
Okay.
Right. So they've had 190, a lot less than automotive.
Right.
190 retailers around the U.S. These are, even the small ones are doing $500 million a year in revenue.
Yeah.
So these are kind of big companies. But Caterpillar's business is fundamentally based off of what parts they sell, what services they can sell aftermarket.
Okay.
So their aftermarket is way bigger than their attempt to actually sell the equipment into the market. Now, this is going to actually make sense. It's a little bit long-winded way of getting around it. They were trying to figure out a way to get into the retail market without violating their channels.
Right.
So what they figured out was, and this will actually full come circle to understand how STELLA became what it is the problem that they had was figuring out how to do that in a way that wouldn't conflict with their channels. And so they ended up designing about 60 self-repair kits that has to do with these right to repair initiatives.
Okay.
So they said, if you're not going to bring your vehicles to us to get serviced, at least let us sell you Cat genuine parts to do the repairs. Replace the alternator, reseal the hydraulic chambers are kind of more complicated. So anywhere from very simple to very complicated repairs.
Okay.
So they had all the data science teams, very complicated data science teams, figure out what packages they need to be. They figured out what parts there need to be, what tools there need to be. And then they ran into a roadblock. They had no instructions to put in the kits.
Right.
So they started building by hand, going into the manuals. Previously, these technical manuals were 600 to 1,800 page books that were sold to the dealers. They're not meant for consumption by the consumers,
Sure.
and they're expensive.
Right.
And so they, through which a course of action, which I'm not going to go through right here, is we ended up in a position to show them how AI can be used to assist this problem, specifically natural language generation.
Sure.
So through POC and pilot process, several years later, fast forwarding, that team has built now probably about 47,000 documents in 17 languages that explain end to end how to take apart a vehicle and put it back together, take out an alternator, remove the battery, all these service operations.
Yeah.
So we were very involved in the language of parts and service and how do you service these vehicles and what do they mean in order to synthesize these new documents.
Yeah. Huh. That is pretty interesting. And then it always amazes me with so many companies how you have a use case and it takes you so far, and then it's like, well, maybe we can do this too, right? And there's this natural progression, and I love that. I love that about any startup or certainly what you guys have done. It's a lot of fun just hearing those stories of progress and branching off a little bit.
So bring it back to what you said.
Yeah.
We're working in service, we're working in parts, and it was a logical step to start with fixed ops.
Sure.
And so we looked at what are the problems of fixed ops. This was around COVID time, and we said people aren't answering their phones, and let's see if we can help in that area. And service scheduling turns out to be incredibly complex to do correct.
Yeah.
But it's still a lot simpler than figuring out how to tear apart a John Deere machine.
In most cases.
In most cases. Fair enough.
Yeah, there are a lot of variables to schedule an appointment. So that's a great backstory. I appreciate you sharing it. So I do want to talk digging into kind of getting honed in on dealerships, right? And the retail automotive space. AI, maybe even at a higher level kind of in general, it's probably the most used phrase at the NADA show this year, which is fine. It's a great thing, right? Mm-hmm. But where do you see adoption today? And what do you see the potential being in the near-term future, next 12 months to 18 months?
Well, okay, there's within dealerships, and there's a general pattern too. So you kind of have to look at what's going on with AI in general.
Okay.
Right? So AI itself, again, buzzword of the decade, right? Buzzword of the decade. What is AI? AI is a combination of different technologies, all with different uses, okay? All trying to simulate human intelligence.
Right.
So it isn't any one thing. It's a combination of things. And it's useful across a wide sector of problems. Let's talk about something that we don't touch, vision.
Okay.
Repair estimation, damage estimation. These are vision applications. These are excellent uses. Okay. Work plans. How do you plan and optimize your time?
Yep.
Right. How do you? So there's just so many optimization use cases, and of course there's our use case too, which is conversational interaction and language.
Yeah.
So for some reason, phones still are a major part of what's going on in dealerships. I think personally, because people think about maintaining their vehicle or servicing their vehicle when they're in their car.
Right. Right. And you can't text, so you just put it on speaker and you call. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that we are seeing more and more dealerships adopting either agent assist functions. So these are things where they are helping their people know what to do or where to follow up, et cetera, right? As well as choosing what you can automate. Getting this whole AI thing regarded the customer side is about hyper-customization at scale. This is about how do you hyper-personalization at scale. How do you create a more personalized, engaged experience? How do you be there and be attentive for everybody at the same time? And it's hard to do that with people. I mean, these dealerships are very, very busy. They want to be, and they should be. And reaching out and touching everybody who has a concern, you need help.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I'm seeing lots of vision application. I'm seeing lots of planning and optimization. I'm seeing a lot of communication optimization, right? Different ways to improve a lot in the analytics space, using AI to figure out whether you're doing a good job, using sales training, making plans for your salespeople. I mean, there's so many opportunities. Microsoft's CEO Satya just came out and said that a lot of what we consider as traditional business applications. And remember, this business transformation of going from the 80s and 90s into using applications to run businesses. There's not a business alive right now, that even farmers that aren't using applications to run their things. That entire thing is about to be upended by these AI initiatives. Satya went on record to say a lot of what we see about traditional business applications are going to move to the AI layer.
Okay. Give me an example of what that means or what that could mean.
Why do you need a form to fill in a repair order when you can take someone's description of a problem and analyze it? Why do you need to take standard forms or web pages when you can take descriptions of problems or be predictive about what people need?
Yeah.
Right? There's something very fixed and immutable about a screen, a web page, right? But when you move to AI interaction, where it's making predictions about what you need and making suggestions,
Sure.
I mean, even I know this is more of a techie thing,
Sure.
but really just having even applications change form depending on what you need them to do. The concept that AI can build a tracker that will give out points to every salesperson who sells a particular model, and you can do that very quickly, and the AI can build all the application around it very quickly, means that opportunities for process optimization and changing how you run, control, and administrate your business across the field is changing.
Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people, except for in a very, very small space, yet have come to grips with how big of a change is coming with this new tech.
So that brings up an interesting, I don't know, I've thought a lot about, because I was hearing somebody talk about this, and it's really been stuck in my head for a while. So I'd love to get your perspective on it. You know, this idea, and you kind of alluded to it there, which is why I bring it up. The idea of basically having AI available to you at any given time to write software for you.
Right.
Right. So very simple use case, right? Basic use case. I'm a general manager at a store, and I have an AI layer, you know, something that I interact with, and I say, all right, AI, I need a tool that will send me a text message every time a customer comes into my service drive that is in positive equity.
Yep.
And again, basic example, but then the AI does its thing, you know, it asks a couple questions. What's your phone number? Where do I find, you know, the information? Or maybe it already knows that it's in the DMS, whatever it might be. But then that software is generated for that store, for that user at that store. And they have basically a custom piece of software built just for them. So thinking about that, like, is that plausible? Is it possible? You know, do you see that as kind of the future?
I would frame it a little bit differently.
Okay.
I think we will get there. These systems still do make mistakes.
Okay.
And so you need kind of informed consent in the middle of that process.
Okay.
What I do see, though, is what you highlighted is something that I had mentioned before, is that you were able to articulate in words what you need.
Yeah.
Which points to the value of language interfaces. And I would say less about it writing software because a person in a dealership asked for a piece of software to be written, to being saying, I don't want to say the SIRI word because it'll trigger everybody's phones, but hey, Bobby, hey, Bobby, can you let me know when anyone comes in who's got a vehicle older than 3 months or negative equity or positive equity, right?
Yeah.
I think the ability for people to dictate what their systems do through description is very much part of this next renaissance.
Interesting. Do you see, let me ask you this, how is and will software development change then?
It already is. AI will not take software development jobs. Developers using AI will take software development jobs.
Okay.
The barrier to implementing competent systems is lowering, not the ground floor, but it's lowering. You can get a lot further with these systems than you could do. Look, we've seen this through tech for generations.
Sure.
You know, people used to write assembly code, really, really detailed computer specifications, and then these languages come out. They had fourth generation languages, 4GLs, 5GLs. So this is a sixth generation language. So the ability to start not with a trained computer language, but the human language, you know, and tell it what to do and turn that into software, you still have to know what to do.
Yeah.
So Andrew Ng, who's very, very famous as an AI thought leader, recently came out and said with the democratization, everyone loves that democratization, sharing the love across everybody.
Right. Spread it out.
Yep. But the democratization of AI and the ability for less skilled individuals, developers, to implement further than ever before with these technologies, it's going to come down to product. And because really the current
so knowing the problem to solve. really
Knowing the
is what.
problem to solve and understanding the AI well enough to know that that is something that could explain this problem, right?
Sure.
It's not just knowing the problem, it's knowing the problem and what's currently capable. So the current product managers that are out there in market by the millions don't necessarily understand AI well enough to come to the developers or come to those systems
Sure.
with the request.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. I think it's pretty fascinating, and it'll be. I think what I'm most excited about to watch what happens is how widely used these types of tools become. And how far they push out from kind of the core developer world, and even product managers and things like that, into, like basically how wide will the path be that AI is being utilized inside of a business. I'm just fascinated to see what that's going to look like, in 2, 5, 10 years, because I think the opportunities are just endless almost.
When mobile apps first started coming up, like I was very involved in that, which is a different story. But I remember at some developer conferences talking about it and them saying, okay, so far, mobile has seen kind of the mobile version of things we already have.
Right.
And they didn't really have the killer mobile apps until this rideshare and this rideshare and Airbnb type stuff came out. So Uber became the killer app, right?
Yeah.
And other things I'm not going to mention on the air for finding relationships and things like that became killer apps, right?
Sure.
We're still figuring out what are the killer apps for AI, the ones that couldn't even possibly exist without AI.
Yep.
And so seeing the evolution of current systems, keeping up with the tech is one thing, but finding those use cases that just would have never even been possible to touch is still very much ahead of us.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that's what makes it exciting for sure. Thinking about that and looking forward, one of the things I'd love to just get your perspective on, and we don't have to go super deep if you're not comfortable with it, but when we think about the regulatory environment, and certainly in the U.S., and probably the need for some level of regulation in a lot of these tools, do you have any perspective on what that could look like in the future, where you see it going when it comes to regulating some of these AI tools?
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of things in play. So first of all, it's a great question. All last year, I was part of the STAR working group for AI. And this is part of the discussion that we're having within that working group, and frequently get briefings as these things change. There's a lot of, especially with the administration changing.
Yes.
Or changed, right? This administration change. We don't know yet where those regulations are going to lie. Different parties have different perspectives on what regulation is needed and how far they can go.
Right.
So there's issues of privacy. That's a big one.
Right.
There's an issue of transparency. And if you look at transparency, yes, we want to be transparent, but how many people would really be able to look at a transparent AI solution and know whether or not A, that's true, or B, giving useful information that allows you to know what's going on?
Right.
I mean, I could give you a dump of a neural network trait, and that's not going to do anything. And transparency doesn't help there.
Sure.
So I think that helping dealers specifically is something STAR's working on.
Yeah.
And they're actively talking through what is the information that is necessary for a dealer to not get hoodwinked by vendors like us, right? and we want to be in good ethic about that ourselves, right? So there's a difference between confusing and being honest.
Right. No, I mean, that's a good, I like that clarification there at the end. Difference between being confusing and being honest, because you have to have both, you have to have the honesty part and the not being confusing part to be there. Right.
You take it to a level that everyone can understand it.
Yes.
And there's inherently some things you're leaving out.
Yep. No, I love that. All right. What else? Let's see. One of the things I wanted to pick your brain on too, it seems like at least a lot of the headline software in the AI space is focused in a lot of ways on variable operations. Obviously, STELLA has a great foothold in fixed operations. Do you see more opportunities in fixed as we move forward as well to kind of dive in and really improve processes or whatever it might be in the back end of the store?
I think there's a lot of opportunity in fixed.
Yep.
And I think it's very much a differentiator at the rooftop level.
Okay.
I think the sales processes and things like that are trainable. There's ways to get better at communicating and following up on the variable side. But on the fixed side, it's complicated. There's technician shortages.
Sure.
There's brain drain. There's people who've been doing this for years and now they're retiring. And how do they carry that information forward?
Yeah.
I've seen some amazing, part of my journey with Stella into automotive has been learning about some amazing highly functional, very intelligent, very analytical dealer groups that really know what they're doing, right? And they have technician shortages. They have to make their own training programs. They have to rely on passing things down from generation to generation with materials available from the OEM.
Yeah.
So I think there's amazing opportunities to help service those vehicles better, faster, more effectively, more efficiently. I think that it's much more for differentiator. And without getting into political conversations that I actually don't know, I do feel that as the relationships change with the OEM and things scale, that service differentiator is still going to be massively important. And it's the rooftop that owns the relationship with that customer. And if they felt they got treated with fairly, efficiently, and effectively at the fixed ops level, they're going to keep coming back and they're going to buy more.
No, you're right. You're right. All right, Stephen. Well, you shared started out with the journey of Stella and kind of how you got here, but clearly not a company, and you don't seem to be an individual that stands still for very long.
Yeah.
So what's next? What's next for Stella? What are you working on?
So first of all, we certainly don't sit on our hands. We are we are very active and engaged in our strategic partnerships, and we're very active and engaged in modernizing our conversation and bringing that up to best practice.
Yeah.
But what the future of Stella holds is we believe in being accurate, responsible, and coming back to that transparency. And a lot of the tech that's out there right now, I don't believe is taking that as a goal to be transparent and controllable.
Yeah.
Stella will never say anything that isn't outside the dealer's control. Full stop.
Yeah.
And that may mean that we're not doing some things that some of our competitors are doing, but it's intentional.
Yeah.
The groups that we're working with are control freaks.
Sure.
And if we can introduce these processes and these detailed conversations in a way that they can control and customize and make their own, well, let's just say that's what we're doing.
Yeah, they feel better about that. No, that's great. Well, Stephen, what haven't we talked about that we should? Anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I think you covered it. What does a dealer need to know about AI and regulatory concerns?
Yep.
And I think that we covered it, but I think it's important that a dealer never, I hate to say this as a vendor, but never trust a vendor. Okay, in this space, they need to do their own learning. They have to learn their own knowledge. They have to understand what it means. They don't have to be technical, but they need to understand that these models can make mistakes. They need to ask whether or not they're training on their data, whether or not they have the ability to impact their data. So just a general education about how these tech work and where the data goes is important, that they know what to ask, I would say. That's probably about it.
That's good. Yeah, it's easy to be wowed by technology, right? But at the end of the day, it's not magic. It works the way it does because of a set of reasons. So if you can understand, the more you can understand that, the more educated decisions you'll be able to make.
So I'd say that it's dealers need to make an education, an investment in understanding this tech more so than any other tech to date.
Love it. All right. Well, Stephen Brown, CTO at STELLA Automotive AI, thank you so much for joining me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Hopefully we can do it again soon sometime.
I loved it. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Thank you.